अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for coming and joining for this marathon reading from the Ramayana, which started last night with His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu reading to us from the Bal Kanda. And so those of you who are following along with the book, which is a summary of the Ramayana by His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj. And he had completed the Balkand, which brought us to page number 74. And I'm going to go and read some more pages today from the Ayodhya Kand, where Ramchandra ji is in Ayodhya. So I'm reading from the book. I don't know how much of eye contact I'll be able to maintain with you, but just bear with me. So we had ended with Sita and Ram getting married and how they were living together and how Sita was serving him so nicely, and as well as Lakshman. So Ayodhya Kand, page number 75. Bharat and Shatrughna remained with their material uncle Yudhajit for some time, being well entertained by him. Meanwhile, at Ayodhya, Ram became the pet son of Maharaj Dasharatha and the beloved of all the citizens. Rama was the Lord Vishnu himself, incarnated within human society for the purpose of killing the wicked Ravana. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Rama exhibited himself as the reservoir of all good qualities. Rama's beautiful bodily features provided all who viewed him with the full satisfaction of their eyes. Ram played the part of a courageous and heroic Kshatriya, yet he was self-controlled, self-satisfied, without malice, and gentle in word and deed. Ram did not take offense when criticized by others, and was pleased by even the smallest show of kindness. He was forgiving and always humble upon his own position. Rama only embraced the association of persons who were pious and of superior wisdom. He was considerate and always the first to welcome guests. Ram firmly adhered to truth and honored the Brahmanas. He loved the citizens and they loved him. Rama always acted according to religious principles and was learned in all the scriptures. He epitomized youthful vigor and was a mature judge of character. Rama was always diligent in punishing wrongdoers and rewarding the virtuous. As a horseman and wielder of the bow, Rama excelled all others, and he was the greatest of the chariot warriors. Indeed, Ram was the lord of the three worlds and the controller of eternal time. He was unconquerable even by the greatest demigods and demons. Maharaj Dasharatha had ruled his kingdom for 60,000 years. Now, having grown old and fatigued, he finally desired to retire from his royal duties to prepare himself for an exalted destination after quitting his body. However, Maharaj Dasharatha began to see various omens foreboding evil. Thus, he anxiously desired to install Ram as his heir apparent as quickly as possible. For this purpose, Maharaj Dasharatha called a meeting of his ministers, prominent citizens, and subordinate kings. However, in his haste, Maharaj Dasharatha did not formally invite King Janak or Kekai, feeling confident of their support. Thereafter, when all were assembled, Maharaj Dasharatha announced, "I have grown old and now desire to hand the royal throne over to my eldest son Rama, who has reached the age of 27. It is now the sacred month of Chaitra, and tomorrow the auspicious constellation Pushya will be ascending. Therefore, with your permission, I will direct that the ceremonies for installing Ram as the heir apparent begin tomorrow." The assembled ministers, kings, and citizens all applauded Dasharatha's proposal. They then glorified Rama's incomparable virtues, equating him with Lord Vishnu himself. Thus, Maharaj Dasharatha was both pleased and relieved. After everyone departed, he requested Vasishtha Muni to immediately begin preparations for the installation ceremony. Vasishtha then ordered the chief minister Sumantra to arrange for the city to be gorgeously decorated and make all other preparations so that the ceremonies could start early the next day. Maharaj Dasharatha then summoned Ram to the royal assembly. Soon thereafter, Ram entered the royal assembly and came before his father. Approaching his father with folded hands, Ram fell flat at his feet, offering his respects. Maharaj Dasharatha then picked up his son and after tightly embracing him, said, "My dear Ram, I have grown old and weary, and feel it is now time for me to retire. I have sufficiently enjoyed all manner of royal opulences. I have performed innumerable sacrifices and I have distributed huge amounts of wealth to the Brahmanas. You, Ram, are my eldest and favorite son. Likewise, all the ministers and citizens love you dearly. Therefore, I have arranged that tomorrow you will be installed as their heir apparent to the royal throne." Hearing this, some of Ram's friends ran to Mother Kaushalya, hoping to be the first to deliver the wonderful news to her. Upon hearing the news, she became overjoyed and gave the bearers of the good tidings gold, jewels, and cows in charity. Thereafter, when Rama returned to his own palace, crowds of cheering citizens greeted him along the way. Meanwhile, Maharaj Dasharatha entered his inner apartments to lie down for some rest. Just as the king was drifting off to sleep, however, he experienced a recurring ominous dream. Walking with a start, he immediately sent Sumantra to summon Ram. The king felt apprehensive that there might be some obstruction to his son's planned installation. Hearing that his father had again called him, Ram also felt a degree of apprehension. Making towards his father's palace with haste, Ram entered his father's room, inquiring what was needed of him. Dasharatha embraced Ram and said, "My dear Ram, all my desires in life have been fulfilled except to see you installed on the throne. Unfortunately, due to the influence of the sun, Mars, and Rahu, this is a very bad astrological period for me. Moreover, I have been experiencing disturbing dreams, prompting me to think that a great calamity awaits me. Therefore, I am eager to expedite matters. I want the installation ceremonies to begin immediately, even without the presence of your brothers, Bharat and Shatrughna. You and Sita should fast tonight for purification. Then tomorrow, in the early morning, prepare yourself for the installation." Ram returned to his palace to inform Sita of the arrangements for the following day. Not finding her there, however, Ram went to the residence of his mother. When Ram entered Kaushalya's room, he saw her sitting with half-closed eyes and suspended breath, silently praying to her household deity, Lord Narayan, for Ram's good fortune. Kaushalya, who was being attended by Lakshmana and Sumitra, got up to greet her son, and Ram addressed her, saying, "O mother, father wishes to install me as the heir apparent to the royal throne." With tears in her eyes, Kaushalya replied, "My austerities have surely not been in vain. May you and Sita live long and happily together." Smiling, Rama turned to his brother Lakshman and said, "My dear brother, you must rule the kingdom along with me, for you are just like my second self. Indeed, I could not even think of finding happiness in royal luxury or even life itself without you." Thereafter, Ram returned to his palace in a jubilant mood. Sita and Ram worshipped Lord Narayan together and then lay down to take rest for the night. Meanwhile, within the city, all the citizens were merrily engaged in preparing for the coming festivities. All the streets in Ayodhya were washed with perfumed water and scattered with fragrant flowers. Brilliant, colorful lights burned in every house and meeting place, turning night into day. The noisy crowd swelled like waves of the sea, and the numerous elephants, horses, and camels appeared to be like large aquatic animals within the ocean. At the time of Kaikeyi's marriage to Maharaj Dasharatha, her father, Ashwapati, the king of Kaikeya, had given her a hunchback maidservant named Manthara. Manthara was actually an apsara, deputed by the demigods to appear on earth to assist in the killing of Ravana. The evening before Rama's planned installation, Manthara went into the palace roof. From there, she could see how the entire city of Ayodhya was splendidly decorated, the streets crowded with citizens in a jubilant mood. Surprised at seeing this, Manthara approached Ram's former nurse and inquired, What great occasion warrants such a celebration? Why do I see Kaushalya in such a joyful mood and giving lavish charity to the Brahmanas? The nurse happily replied, "Tomorrow the constellation Pushya will be in the ascendant. Taking advantage of the auspicious time, Maharaj Dasharatha will install Ram as his heir apparent to the royal throne." This unexpected news pierced the envious heart of Manthara. Suspecting foul play of the king, she suddenly became enraged and thus sought Kaikeyi. Surprised at finding her mistress peacefully lounging on the couch in her apartment, Manthara explained, get up, you fool! Can't you see the disaster that's about to engulf you? Are you so deluded by your husband's sweet words that you do not realize what is happening before your eyes?" Kaikeyi innocently replied that she could find no fault in her husband's plans. This, however, only further enraged Manthara. Having mastered the art of persuasive speech, Manthara then spoke to Kaikeyi in a way that eventually caused her to doubt her husband. Posing as a well-wisher, Manthara continued, "Surely you are aware of your husband's plan to install Ram as his successor to the throne. Can't you see how deceitfully your husband has acted? He has merely sent Bharat away so that he can secretly install his pet son Ram on the throne. Once Ram becomes emperor, your son will meet his ruin, and you will be plunged into an ocean of despair. Moreover, because I am dependent on you, your fortune is also mine. Please let me help you before it's too late. Please act quickly to save your own son Bharat and yourself." Kaikeyi was surprised to hear her maidservant speaking so boldly. She replied, "I am happy to know that Ram will be installed on the throne. As a reward for delivering this wonderful news, please take this jewel. Indeed, you may ask for anything you desire." Kaikeyi placed a priceless jewel in Manthara's hand, but the maidservant threw it aside. Manthara indignantly replied, "I am shocked to see that you can express joy on the eve of disaster. Passing over Bharat to choose Ram would be a great insult to you. You may imagine that you are Dasharatha's favorite. However, in truth, it is Kaushalya whom he adores. Don't you feel humiliated? You imagine that you are happy, but it will be Kaushalya who prospers. Once Ram becomes king, you will be compelled to act as Kaushalya's maidservant, and Bharat will be forced to become Rama's slave." In this way, Kaikeyi's heart gradually became poisoned by Manthara's hateful words. Indeed, when her enviousness of Kaushalya was fully aroused, her face became flushed with anger. Thus Kaikeyi relented, saying, "Manthara, perhaps you are right. Somehow Rama must be banished to the forest so that my own son can be installed on the throne. Please tell me how I might accomplish this." Manthara then related how Dasharatha had formerly fought on the side of Indra against the demons, headed by Sambara. Because Sambara knew so many illusory tricks, the demigods were afraid to fight with him. Once, after the demons had severely routed the demigods, Dasharatha led an attack on their capital city, Vijayanta. Although he fought heroically, Dasharatha was critically wounded during the battle and fell unconscious. Kaikeyi then removed him from the battlefield and saved his life. Out of deep gratitude, Maharaj Dasharatha offered Kaikeyi 2 boons. However, she replied that she would ask for them when needed. Manthara then said, "And now is the time to ask for those promised boons. With one, you will ask that Bharat be installed on the throne. With the other, demand that Ram be banished to the forest for 14 years. Ram's absence will give Bharat the opportunity to establish his popularity among the citizens. Then his position as rightful ruler will be secure." Then Manthara further instructed Kaikeyi, saying, "Go to the sulking chamber, and after throwing off your costly ornaments and royal dress, put on old dirty clothes and lie on the cold floor. When Maharaj Dasharatha comes to see you, remain silent at first. However, do not worry. His attachment to you is so great, he will not be able to bear seeing you unhappy. He will do anything to pacify you. Regardless, keep your ambition firmly fixed in your mind. You will not settle for anything less than having your son installed on the throne. Do not allow him to pacify you with gold, jewels, or anything else. Simply remind him of the 2 boons he promised. When he consents to this, then you shall demand that Bharat be installed immediately and Ram banished to the forest." Because her fickle heart had come completely under the sway of malice and greed, Kekai was delighted with Manthara's plan. She assured the maidservant that she would follow her advice to the letter. Indeed, through her twisted association, Kekai had become obsessed with the idea of making Bharat the emperor of the world. Like a madman, Kekai glorified Manthara, considering her to be the cause of all good fortune. She said, "My dear Manthara, although hunchbacks are generally sinful, you are wise and honorable. I think your so-called deformed body is quite beautiful. Indeed, you stoop over like a lotus flower bending in the breeze. Thus, your appearance is very charming. Moreover, your breasts are large and lovely, concealing your delicate navel as they bend low. Your hips are graceful and your thighs are smooth and shapely. Dressed in bright silk, you appear to shimmer, while the ankle bells that circle your soft feet tinkle melodiously. The entire science of diplomacy must be residing with your hump, which is as large as the hub of a chariot wheel. My dear Manthara, when Bharat is installed as their heir apparent, I shall garland your hump with a chain of pure gold. When Rama is exiled to the forest, I shall smear your hump with sandalwood paste. O Manthara, I will reward you with exquisite dresses and ornaments and make all the other hunchback women become your maidservants and massage your feet." Meanwhile, having completed all necessary arrangements for Rama's installation, Maharaj Dasharatha returned to his palace, desiring to see Kekai. Filled with longing for his youngest queen, Dasharatha was surprised to find her absent when he entered her room. Thinking her to be nearby, the king called out her name. However, when there was no response, he became apprehensive, for she had never before left her apartment without notice. Finally, after inquiring from a servant, Maharaj Dasharatha learned that Kekai had entered the sulking chamber. He hastened there with an anxious heart. When the king entered the room, he was shocked to see Kekai lying on the bare floor. With her ornaments and garlands scattered about, she looked like an apsara fallen from heaven. In the king's mind, the beautiful young Kekai was dearer than life itself. Thus, seeing her in such a state caused him great pain and alarm. Falling to his knees, the king lovingly stroked her face and asked his beloved queen, "What is troubling you, my dear Kekai? What is the cause of your despondency? Whatever it may be, please know I am prepared to remedy it. When have I not been paying enough attention to you? Did you have an argument with one of your co-wives? Has someone done something to anger you? My dearest one, please know I am under your control and I could never avoid trying to please you. Please speak freely and tell me what troubles you. Let me dispel your sorrow as the rising sun evaporates the morning mist." Pierced by Cupid's shaft of love, Maharaj Dasharatha was a slave to the urges of passion. Upon hearing the king's words, Kekai felt confident that her goal would be achieved. After a brief silence, Kekai replied, "No one has insulted me or shown me any disrespect. My lord, I will tell you what is in my mind. However, you must first assure me that you will unhesitatingly accomplish whatever I desire." While resting her head upon his lap, Maharaj Dasharatha tenderly smoothed Kekai's disheveled hair and replied, "You know that I love no one more except Ram. I swear that I will execute whatever you order. Feel free to tell me what you want, and I will accomplish it without fail. Please know that I will always do whatever you want. Now tell me what is troubling you." After hearing his triple assurance, Kekai was certain that her husband was completely under her thumb. Urged on by an inflamed desire born of partiality toward her son, the queen proclaimed the following terrible words: "May the 12 Adityas, the 11 Rudras, the 8 Vasus, the twin Ashwins bear witness. May the sun and moon, night and day, and the 4 directions also bear witness. May the Gandharvas, Rakshasas, Pitas, Bhutas, Pishachas, and all living creatures bear witness now. My illustrious Lord, the follower of Dharma and adherent to truth, has promised to fulfill my desire. Remember, my dear husband, the battle between the demigods and the demons, when you were critically wounded and left for dead? Remember how I nursed you back to life. Because of this, you promised to award me 2 benedictions. O noble king, you must grant me those 2 boons today without fail. Otherwise, I shall give up my life from grief. Therefore, my request is this. Let Bharat be installed as heir apparent to the royal throne, utilizing the very preparations we have made for Ram. That is my first wish. Second, I desire for Ram to depart for Dandakaranya forest this very day, to live in exile for the next 14 years, wearing only tree bark and deer skin. Hearing Keke's ultimatum, Maharaj Dasharatha was stunned with bewilderment. Burning with distress, he wondered, what is happening to me? Am I perceiving a vision from a previous life? Perhaps I have gone completely mad. Thinking in this way, the king immediately became overwhelmed with grief. He lost consciousness and fainted onto the floor. Then when he had recovered after a brief spell, the agonized Dasharatha found the situation too painful to cope with and again fell into a swoon. It was only after a long time that King Dasharatha regained full consciousness. Summoning his courage, he felt a burning rage swelling within his heart. With great irritation, Maharaj Dasharatha rebuked Kekeyi. You vicious woman, are you so perverse that you are determined to destroy my entire dynasty? What have I done to deserve this? What offense has Ram ever committed against you? Ram loves you as much as his own mother. Why are you so bent upon harming him? Everyone loves Ram more than life itself, and I could not live without him. I could abandon my other two wives if need be, but I could never forsake Ram. His rage being vented, Maharaj Dasharatha's mood suddenly changed. The king then humbly touched his head to Kekeyi's feet and pleaded, My dear beautiful queen, please give up your terrible determination. Ram is the embodiment of all virtues. He is kind, forgiving, truthful, gentle, fixed in his duty, and the well-wisher of everyone. Ram has always served you as lovingly as your son Bharat, if not more. If you insist, I will install Bharat as heir apparent to the throne, but I could never think of banishing Ram to the forest. How can you dare even consider harming Ram? Indeed, he is completely faultless and has never uttered an unkind word to you. My dear beloved one, have pity on me. Ask for any other benedictions. I am ready to give you the entire earth, but not this. If I banish Ram, I will surely die. Please spare me from executing this most cruel and irreligious act. As Maharaj Dasharatha spoke, he writhed in agony, wailing piteously. Although the king prayed for her mercy, Kekeyi remained unmoved. Standing fast in her determination, she responded, How can you dare speak about dharma while you are trying to rescind your promise of granting me these benedictions? You solemnly promised, and I shall not forget. Remember King Sibi, who gave his own flesh to the hawk just to fulfill his promise of protection to the pigeon? If you fail to keep your word, it will stain the reputation of your entire dynasty. Therefore, whatever the circumstance, you must fulfill your promise. As Kekeyi spoke, her determination increased. Overwhelmed by anger and greed, and giving up all sense of shame and decency, Kekeyi said, O king, I know your true motive. Once Ram is installed as heir apparent, it will be easier for you to push my son and me away. With this impediment removed, you will be free to enjoy your life fully with Kaushalya. However, I vow that if you do not keep your promise, I shall drink poison and die this very day. Then Kekeyi remained silent as Maharaj Dasharatha agonized over her words. Staring into space with unblinking eyes, the king again lost all equilibrium and fell to the ground, uttering, Rama, Rama. After some time, the king regained partial composure and asked his wife, O misguided woman, from whom did you learn such shameful wickedness? Do you not know that even if Bharat were to be installed, he would not accept the kingdom without Ram? What will people think of me for performing such an ignoble act? Everyone will ridicule me, saying, There goes the lusty king who was so attached to his wife that he sent his beloved son into exile. How do you think there will be happiness under such conditions? Pausing in his speech, Maharaj Dasharatha began wondering how Ram, who had always enjoyed the comforts of royal opulence, would be able to live a harsh life in the forest. As his pain and anger increased with these thoughts, the king suddenly mocked, O righteous queen, I wish you all success in ruling the kingdom after having rid yourself of all your relatives. Do not expect me to play a part in your sinister plans. I shall never grant your demands, never. Regardless, the king's bluster soon faded as helplessness welled up within him. He again implored his queen to retract her statements, saying, Please take back all you have. Saying this, he again fainted. After Dasharatha regained consciousness, he again rebuked Kekai. Oh, how condemned women are! They are cruel, perverse, and selfish by nature. If not all women, then surely you, O mother of Bharata. Your demands are evil and malicious. I will never grant them. You can scream as you like, take poison or threaten me, but I shall never banish Ram to the forest. Dasharatha's eyes were red from weeping and his voice pitiful to hear, yet Kekai callously turned her head away. Again and again he begged her, but to no avail. The king prayed that the night would never pass so that he would not have to face the ordeal of banishing Ram to the forest the following day. However, King Dasharatha finally realized that Kekai was unwavering in her determination and again fainted from hopelessness. While King Dasharatha was arguing with Kekai, Vasishtha Muni completed the preparations for the coronation ceremony. The moon, lord of the stars, had entered the lunar mansions of Pushya and the sacred hour of installation had arrived. As Vasishtha Muni made his way through the streets to the king's palace, he saw that flags, festoons, and garlands decorated all the houses. Likewise, the streets which had been sprinkled with scented water were filled with throngs of people anxiously awaiting Lord Ram's appearance. Passing through the joyous crowds, Vasishtha Muni, followed by all great sages, entered the palace grounds that were beautifully decorated with gardens and reservoirs of water, replete with lotus flowers, swans, and shade-giving flower trees. As Vasishtha Muni was about to enter the palace, he saw Sumantra, King Dasharatha's chief minister, who had also just returned. Please tell His Majesty that I have returned, Vasishtha told him. I have brought golden water pots filled with water from the sacred rivers, and a special seat of sacred wood has been made for Ram's use during the sacrifice. I have also brought various seeds, aromatic perfumes, and precious jewels for the coronation. I have collected honey, curd, roots, ghee, milk, spices, flowers, parched paddy grains, and blades of sacred glass, all to be used in the sacrifice. I have also brought 8 virgin girls and many excellent elephants, and a splendid chariot drawn by 4 horses, a special sword, a bow, a palanquin with bearers, an umbrella resembling the moon, a pair of chamara fans, a sacred bow, and a throne decorated with carved lions. Everything necessary for the sacrifice has been collected. Therefore, please ask the king to bring Ram so that the ceremony may begin as soon as the moon has fully entered the constellation Pushya. Entering the king's chambers, Sumantra soon reached the room where Dasharatha and Kekai were sitting. Not knowing what had taken place between the king and his wife, Sumantra was joyful. He was therefore quite surprised when the king, whose happiness had forever terminated, cried out, "O Sumantra, you are cutting my heart to pieces," and fell unconscious to the floor. The king had not slept all night because of joy over Ram's installation, Kekai told him. Then the king regained consciousness and ordered Sumantra to summon Ram. At Ram's palace, Sumantra was quickly ushered into the presence of Sita and Ram. The Lord was garlanded with white lotus flowers, with golden necklaces covering his transcendental body. Being attended by servants who were fanning him with chamaras and offering him various gifts with great devotion, Ram appeared like the supreme Lord Vishnu, who, in fact, he was. Hearing the king's summons, Ram remarked to Sita, "My father must be calling me for some auspicious purpose concerning the installation ceremony." As Ram departed, Lakshmana was standing at the gate, waiting for Ram with folded hands. Ram took his brother with him and then mounted his chariot, traveling through the streets of Ayodhya. Along the way, the citizens cheered, praising Ram to the accompaniment of musicians. Wherever he went, the people could not take his eyes away from him. Indeed, the natural characteristic of Lord Ram is that whoever looks upon him cannot bear to look away. Reaching the inner gates of his father's palace, Ram descended from his chariot and dismissed the citizens that had accompanied him. As he entered his father's room, Ram saw Maharaj Dasharatha seated on a couch with Kekai. The king's face was a withered mask of dejection and anxiety. As Ram approached, the king could only mutter, "Ram, Ram," as his eyes filled with tears, unable to look directly at his son. Seeing his father's distressed state, Ram's heart became filled with grief and apprehension. He wondered, what has happened to make my father so dispirited? Why is he not happy to see me? Ram then inquired from Kekai, "What is the cause of my father's distress? Have I done something to offend him?" The king, Kekai began, is neither angry nor offended. He does, however, have something to tell you. He fears that by doing so, he will hurt you. Therefore, let me explain. Formerly, your father offered me 2 boons after I saved him in a precarious situation on the battlefield. However, due to unmanly weakness, he now hesitates to fulfill his promise. Therefore, Ram, you should protect your father's virtue by convincing him not to fall prey to dishonesty. O Ram, if you promise me that you are fully prepared to carry out the king's order, then I shall disclose to you the nature of the 2 boons I desire. Feeling deeply hurt, Ram replied, My dear mother, I am surprised that there is any doubt in your mind that I will unflinchingly carry out my father's wishes, even if it meant entering into fire. Please tell me what my father wants. Do not doubt that I will act accordingly. That is my solemn promise. Gaining Ram's assurance, the cruel Kekai said, Formerly, when your father was severely wounded in fighting the demon Sambara, at the behest of the demigods, I carefully nursed him back to life. Feeling a deep sense of gratitude, the king begged me to accept 2 boons. I said that I would accept them later in a time of need. Now I wish to utilize those boons. First, I have requested your father to install Bharata as the heir apparent to the throne. Secondly, I have asked the king to banish you to the forest for 14 years, where you will live as an ascetic with matted hair and dressed with tree bark and deer skin. It is your duty to ensure that your father does not go back on his word and thus tread the path of unrighteousness. Hearing her words, Ram did not become even slightly distressed or agitated. Without any indication of displeasure, he cheerfully replied, My dear mother, I shall immediately retire to the forest as you desire. Let messengers be sent at once to summon Bharat. I have no regrets. My only wish is that you and my father may always look upon me favorably. My dear mother, please do not harbor any ill feeling toward me. At this, Kekai exclaimed with delight, It is settled. Send messengers to my brother's house so that my son may come here at once. As for you, Ram, I urge you to depart for the forest without delay. Do not worry about your father. For the moment he is bewildered, but after your departure he will come around. Ram then said, My dear mother, it grieves me that my father has not ordered me himself, but I am ready to depart for the forest with your command alone. Hearing this conversation, Maharaj Dasharatha could only mutter, How painful, how terrible. When Kekai finished speaking, the king again fainted onto the floor. Then as Ram gently lifted up his father, he told Kekai, I do not want to live in this world as a slave to greed and passion. Like the rishis, I am devoted to righteousness. I would never give up the path of virtue for the sake of ruling a mere kingdom. Dear mother, there was no need in bothering my father. If you would simply have asked me directly, I would have unhesitatingly given you the kingdom and retired to the forest. Ram bowed to King Dasharatha and Kekai and departed to tell his mother the news. Lakshmana, who had heard everything at the door, followed his elder brother. It was only with great effort that he managed to control his rage. As the 2 brothers left the palace, a pitiful wailing was heard from all who had found out about Ram's impending exile. When Maharaja Dasharatha heard those cries of lamentation, he hid himself under his bed sheets in shame. When Ram entered Kaushalya's apartment, he was joyfully greeted and ushered into his mother's room. When he came in, she immediately embraced him, saying, I am so happy, Ram. Today you will be installed as successor to the throne. With great gentleness and humility, Ram replied, My dear mother, please do not allow yourself to be overcome by grief at what I must tell you. Because of 2 benedictions that my father formally promised Kekai, Bharat will be installed as the heir apparent to the throne, and this very day I shall leave Ayodhya to dwell in the forest for 14 years. Hearing this, Kaushalya immediately fainted to the floor. Then after Ram tenderly lifted Kaushalya to her feet, she bitterly lamented, What greater misery would befall me than this? It would be better for me to have remained childless. Why has death not come to me instantly upon hearing of this calamity? My younger co-wives will surely despise me now. By hearing their taunts, my life will be doubly miserable. Until then, Lakshman had controlled his rage. However, no longer able to remain silent, he suddenly burst out, "O Ram, our father has become senile and perverse, being overpowered by lust. He has become a plaything in the hands of that wicked Kekai. Why should we passively stand by and accept this? A father, a king, or a spiritual master who cannot distinguish between what should and should not be done must be rejected. Ram, you should take over the government immediately, before everyone hears of the king's decision to install Bharat. Besides, even if all the ministers and citizens have found out, if they are against your installation, I am prepared to annihilate the whole Ayodhya if necessary. My dear mother, you should know that I at least am loyal to Ram. Indeed, I am ready to kill the foolish Dasharatha if it is necessary to install Ram upon the throne." Kaushalya, however, did not care for the kingdom. She only feared separation from her beloved son. She said, "O Ram, please do not go into exile. It will be more virtuous for you to stay here and please your poor mother than to go to the forest at the command of your father. Ram, if you leave Ayodhya, then I shall fast to death, for life will become unbearable for me." Ram replied, "Mother, it is not possible for me to disobey my father. Therefore, you must give me your permission so I may depart for the forest at once. The order of one's father can never be avoided. Just consider how Parashuram beheaded his own mother, Renuka, on the order of his father, Jamdagni. Likewise, the sage Kandu killed a cow at his father's command. Therefore, I too must obey my father." Turning to Lakshman, Ram said, "My dear brother, do not allow yourself to come under the sway of all-devouring wrath. Give up the idea of seizing the throne by force and accept the order of our father." Ram again addressed Kaushalya, "My dear mother, please do not torture yourself or talk of ending your life. After the term of my exile is over, I shall return to you. Therefore, please give me your blessings so I may depart without unnecessary remorse." Kaushalya, however, could only cry in desperation. Then Ram became stern and said to Lakshman, "You are both causing me more grief by opposing my desire to honor my father's command. I will not be swayed from my duty." Then to pacify Lakshman, Ram said, "My dear brother, as soon as Bharat is installed, all of this will be forgotten. Then you will be able to easily give up your grief. Do not blame Kekai, for she is only an instrument in the hands of Providence, the real shaper of our destinies." Lakshmana refused to be pacified. He angrily retorted, "O Ram, it appears that you have become impotent, for you have given up your Kshatriya reliance on personal prowess and are just surrendering to destiny. I am not such a eunuch, however, and shall subdue fate by my own power. I will install you on the royal throne this very day." Hearing this, Kaushalya could understand that nothing could deter Ram. She then pleaded, "O my son, if you are determined to execute your father's command, then please allow me to accompany you to the forest." Ram replied, "Dear mother, after being deceived by Kekai and then deserted by you, my father would certainly give up his life. The foremost duty of a chaste and virtuous wife is to never leave her husband under any circumstance. He is her lord for as long as she lives. Regardless of how noble or religious a woman may be, if she commits sin, she commits sin if she fails to serve her husband. A wife's duty is to please and obey her husband and no one else. This is the verdict of all the scriptures. Please then remain with my father and wait for me, for I shall return after 14 years without fail." Kaushalya gave up all hope of accompanying Ram and finally agreed to give him her blessings. After giving Ram permission to depart for the forest, Kaushalya induced the Brahmanas to perform sacrifices for her son's well-being. Kaushalya declared, "May you soon return so that my happiness will be restored. May righteousness be your protector. May the demigods protect you, and may the celestial weapons defend you. May heaven and earth, the air, the wind, the land and water, and all animate and inanimate beings protect you. May daytime and night, the sun and moon protect you. May you be happy, O Ram, for my blessings shall go with you." Sita had heard nothing of Ram's exile. She had been waiting for him in happy expectation for many hours. When Ram finally entered her room, Sita could immediately see that he was pale, perspiring, and greatly troubled. Ram was also not accompanied by his usual royal entourage. Sita inquired, "My lord, what is the matter?" Without hesitation, Ram replied, "My father has ordered me to leave the kingdom and to reside in the forest. Bharata is to be installed as the heir apparent to the royal throne. Utilizing two boons given her long ago by my father, Kaikeyi has asked that her son be installed while I am to be banished to the forest. My dear Sita, I have no other choice than to abide by my father's order. However, I want you to stay here, go daily and offer your respects at the feet of my father and follow Bharat's commands implicitly. My dearest, I have come here just to see you before departing for the forest." Hearing Ram's words, Sita grew increasingly agitated. With anger born of love, she replied, "O Ram, my husband, most excellent of men, what advice are you giving me? It is the duty of the wife to share the husband's destiny. I must accompany you to the forest. A father, mother, brother, son, and daughter-in-law all have their separate existence. A wife, however, has no choice but to follow her husband. I cannot take refuge in anyone else, not even myself. My husband is my only refuge. Therefore, I am determined to follow you. I shall walk behind you and eat only after you have eaten. I will never do anything to displease you, and I shall remain happy to gaze at the hills, lakes, and rivers. I will never become tired, and I will feel secure in your care. I would not want to live even in heaven if you were not there. O Ram, it is you alone that I love. Without you, I would surely die." Because of her frailty, Ram was not inclined to take Sita with him. Thus, in an attempt to discourage her, Ram said, "O delicate lady, one has to endure great discomfort while living in the forest. There are no soft beds to lie upon, and one has to bear the onslaughts of excessive heat, cold, and torrential rain. In the forest, one can only hope to eat fruits and roots. There's always danger from ferocious animals that stalk in search of prey. Considering these conditions, I could never allow you to accompany me to the forest." Ram's words of refusal made Sita tremble with fear at the prospect of separation from her lord. As pearl-like tears rolled down her cheeks like drops of water falling from a lotus leaf, Sita replied, "As long as I remain with you, any inconvenience or danger will be of no consequence. O Ram, without her husband, a wife cannot live. If you do not allow me to go with you, I shall give up my life by taking poison, entering fire, or by drowning myself. Before my marriage, an astrologer predicted that I would have to spend part of my life in the forest. Therefore, my dear husband, I know that it is my destiny to accompany you. To be with you is heaven, and to live without you is hell. Therefore, you must take me with you." Ram remained reluctant to allow Sita to accompany him into exile. Sita felt as though she were falling into a great abyss of calamity. Thus she became almost mad, fearing separation from her husband. Unable to tolerate Ram's stubbornness any longer, Sita began to chastise him. "My father made a big mistake in choosing you for a son-in-law. How can you think of deserting your wife who married you before puberty? Are you going to leave her unprotected and exposed to the stares of others? The citizens of Ayodhya are fools for declaring Ram is as splendid as the sun. His glories are without equal. I refuse to remain here alone while you go off to the forest. Either you take me with you, or I will take poison and die." Crying bitterly, her heart tormented with grief, Sita was on the verge of fainting. Seeing her pitiful condition was more than Ram could bear. His heart softened, and he took his chaste wife Sita in his arms. Ram then assured her that she could indeed accompany him. "Dear Sita," Ram began, "I only tried to dissuade you because I did not understand the true situation of your mind. O Sita, I could no more abandon you than a wise man could give up his sense of compassion. How could I ever rest peacefully knowing that you were unhappy? Go then and give away in charity all your valuables, clothes, jewels, and whatever you possess to the Brahmanas. As Sita joyfully departed, Lakshmana, who was standing nearby, came forward and caught hold of Ram's lotus feet. With tear-filled eyes, Lakshmana pleaded, "O Ram, please allow me also to accompany you to the forest." Hoping to discourage Lakshman, Ram replied, "My dear brother, you must remain here at Ayodhya to serve my two mothers, Kaushalya and Sumitra. Without your protection, they will surely be mistreated by Keikei." To this, Lakshman replied, "Surely our brother Bharat will take care of everything. There is no need to be anxious for our mothers. O Ram, as you traverse the forest, I shall walk in front with my bow in hand, allowing you and the daughter of the king of Videha, Sita, to enjoy the scenic delights. I will also gather fruits and roots as you sleep and stand nearby to guard you." So there was a footnote to on page 102 where Ram's heart was softened. And Prabhupada has a comment on that. And he says that in Vedic civilization, there are hundreds of similar examples of such renunciation on the parts of queens and dedication to the husband. The goddess of fortune, Mother Sita, followed her husband Ramchandra when he went to the forest. Lord Ramchandra went to the forest in compliance with the order of his father, Maharaj Dasharatha, but Mother Sita was not so ordered. Nonetheless, she voluntarily accepted the path of her husband. Such queens also instructed the general people by showing them how to become a chaste wife and follow the husband in every stage of life. When the husband is king, she sits beside him as the queen, and when he goes to the forest, she also follows, despite having to tolerate all kinds of difficulties in living in the forest. Back to the text on page 103, second paragraph. At last Ram agreed. He then instructed Lakshman, "You may certainly come, but first take leave of your mother. Afterward, bring the two mighty bows given by Varuna to Maharaj Janak, the impenetrable armor, two inexhaustible quivers, and a pair of powerful swords. After paying your respect to Vashishta, return here with the weapons, and we shall depart." Having fulfilled Ram's orders, Lakshman returned. Ram then asked him to summon the foremost of Brahmanas so that he could distribute all his possessions in charity. Soon thereafter, Shiryagya, the son of Vashishta, and the sons of Agastya and Vishwamitra arrived at the royal palace. After duly welcoming them, Ram instructed his dependents to look after the palaces in their absence. Ram then ordered his treasurer to bring forth all his wealth. Thereafter, a huge hill of gold and jewels was stacked high, along with other valuables such as clothing, chariot, and animals. In this way, Ram began to distribute his possessions. It happened that a Brahmin named Trijat resided in the forest near Ayodhya. Because of his extreme poverty, the Brahmana was very weak and frail. His wife pleaded with him to go to Ayodhya to ask some charity from Ram. Thereafter, the Brahmana set out and happened to arrive just when Ram was distributing his wealth. When the Brahmana approached him and described his impoverished condition, Ram jokingly replied, "Take your staff and throw it as far as you can. As many cows as that stick passes over, I shall give you." Trijat tightened his belt and then excitedly threw his staff into the air. To everyone's surprise, his staff soared all the way across the Saryu and landed amongst a herd of thousands of cows that were grazing from the river's edge up to the point where his stick had landed. Ram then embraced the Brahmana, saying, "Please do not be offended by my jest. I merely wish to see your exhibition of Brahminical prowess." After that, Ram gave away everything in his possession. He made sure that no Brahmana, relative, dependent, or beggar failed to receive charity on that day. Ram, Sita, and Lakshman then proceeded on foot through the streets of Ayodhya toward the palace of Maharaj Dasharatha. The citizens observing Ram traveling about in this fashion, some from their 47-story mansions and others in crowds on the street, all became greatly pained. They cried, "Oh, how unfortunate that even common people are now able to see Sita, who formerly never appeared in public. We shall take our families to accompany Ram so that Ayodhya will become like an uninhabited forest and the forest will become like a populous city." As Ram entered Keikei's quarters, he saw Sumantra and asked the charioteer to announce his presence to the king. Upon hearing of Ram's arrival, Maharaj Dasharatha ordered Sumantra to assemble his consorts so that he could meet with his son in their presence. Shortly thereafter, 350 young maidservants came and surrounded Kaushalya. Then Ram, accompanied by Sita and Lakshmana, entered his father's room. King Dasharatha ran to embrace him. Overwhelmed by grief, the king fell unconscious before reaching his beloved son. At that, Ram rushed forward, picking up his father in his arms, while all around the people cried in anguish. After being brought to his couch, Dasharatha regained consciousness. Ram then said, "My dear father, I have come to bid you farewell. Please give me permission to depart for the forest with Sita and Lakshmana." Maharaj Dasharatha urged, "Ram, please accept my advice. Take me captive at once and then occupy the royal throne by force. No one can stop you." Ram replied, "Dear father, I have no desire to achieve sovereignty over the earth or royal opulence." Maharaj Dasharatha then said, "You may leave with my blessings, but please stay here for just one day so I may have the opportunity to see you." However, Ram replied, "I must leave immediately. It is my duty to fulfill your promise and do as Kaikeyi has ordered me. I must leave for the forest at once." Maharaj Dasharatha then embraced Ram, and afterward he again fell unconscious. Sumantra, who was weeping profusely, also fell to the floor. Everyone except Kaikeyi cried aloud with grief. Sumantra had been the most intimate associate of the royal family. Thus he, more than all others, suffered because of the calamity before them. Suddenly Sumantra approached Kaikeyi and began chastising her harshly, saying, "O wicked woman, by sending away Ram, you will become the murderer of your own husband. Your selfish demands violate the religious principle that a kingdom be handed over to the eldest son. Indeed, you shall reap the bitter fruits of your evil deeds, for when Ram goes away, all the Brahmanas will follow him. Thus your kingdom will become devoid of all auspiciousness. I will tell you something for your benefit. Once upon a time, your father Kaikeyi received a benediction from a rishi that enabled him to understand all languages, even those of animals. However, in giving the boon, the rishi made one condition. If Kaikeyi ever disclosed the meaning of any speech that he had heard from an animal, he would die. Later, the king once happened to hear the shrill cry of a bird. Because he understood its meaning, he began to laugh heartily. However, the queen, your mother, imagined that the king was laughing at her. Therefore, she demanded to know what he found to be so amusing. The king then informed his queen of the rishi's benediction, warning her that he would die if he disclosed what the bird had said. The foolish queen was so stubborn and jealous, however, that she replied, "You can live or die, I do not care. I only insist that you give me what you are laughing, that you tell me why you are laughing." The mortified king then went to the rishi who had given him the benediction. Explaining his predicament, the rishi advised that he did not disclose the bird's speech and that he should rebuke the queen for her impudence. Taking the rishi's words seriously, Maharaj Kaikeyi gathered his courage and chastised his wife severely. After that, he lived happily thereafter. In the same way, Kaikeyi, you are acting impudently towards your husband. Admit your fault and give up your wicked plan. Kaikeyi, however, remained unmoved. Thus, considering Ram's exile to be inevitable, Maharaj Dasharatha ordered Sumantra, Make ready one akshahini of soldiers and organize many merchants, hunters, and the royal treasurer, so that they may accompany Ram into exile. Though he may reside in the forest, my beloved son does not have to go without objects of comfort and enjoyment. Hearing this, Kaikeyi was seized with fear. Bharat will not accept the kingdom if you strip it of all its resources before his installation. Growing progressively weaker, Dasharatha said, "If you will not let Ram go to the forest in comfort, then I shall take all the citizens with me myself and accompany him." Kaikeyi snapped, "In our dynasty, there is the example of how King Sagar exiled his eldest son, Asmanjas. Therefore, you should cast off Ram in the same way." Hearing this, the elder minister Siddhartha retorted, "Asmanjas used to take delight in drowning other children in the river Sarayu. When the citizens complained of this to King Sagar, he rejected his cruel son. How is your comparison valid? Where is the fault of Ram?" Ram interjected, "My dear father, please do not be upset. I have no use for the royal comforts you desire for me. Let Kaikeyi's maidservants bring me tree bark, at once so that I can bear suitable clothing for my forest life. Hearing his request, the shameless Keki personally went and brought clothes made from tree bark and asked Ram to put it on. Without hesitation, Ram and Lakshman obediently took off their royal garments and put on the clothes presented by Keki. Sita, however, felt very unhappy when she accepted her dress made from kusha grass and tree bark, and her eyes filled with tears. When she tried to put the dress on, it kept slipping off, for she was not at all accustomed to such clothing. Ram then took the dress of tree bark and draped it over Sita's silk sari. This was unbearable to Vashishta. With tears in his eyes, he restrained Ram and chastised Kekeyi with strong words. "You wretched woman, don't you see that everyone is prepared to follow Ram? Indeed, you will find that even Bharat and Shatrughan will follow him, leaving you alone to rule an empty kingdom. At least allow Sita to go into the forest with a comfortable dress and be carried on some conveyance." Sita, however, was determined to follow her husband's example and kept the forest clothes on. Seeing Sita distressed in this way, the palace residents began to condemn Dasharatha with strong words. Hearing their talk, the king lost all interest in continuing his life. Nearly an hour passed as Maharaj Dasharatha remained delirious, incoherently mumbling words of reproach to himself. Later, when the king became a little more composed, he ordered Sumantra to bring a chariot to carry Ram to the forest. At this time, Kekeyi embraced Sita and gave her the following womanly advice. "It is well known that during times of misfortune, women will desert even righteousness and loving husbands. Such wicked women forget all past favors, and nothing can bind them. Because of ingratitude, such selfish women cannot be controlled by wisdom, gifts, or even marriage. However, there are also women who are gentle, truthful, and obedient by nature. Thus they honor the husbands above all. O Sita, please do not despise my son on account of his exile. Let him always remain your worshipable Lord in all circumstances." Sita accepted her words with folded hands and replied, "I know well my duty towards my husband. Please do not speak to me about faithless women. My attachment to Ram is like that of the moonlight to the moon. There is no veena without strings or chariot without wheels. Similarly, there is no future for a wife without a husband, even though she may possess thousands of sons. Ram is my Lord, and he shall always be. How could I despise him?" Kaushalya began weeping, thinking of the impending separation from her son. Trying to comfort her, Ram assured her that the time would pass quickly. Then he took leave of his stepmothers as they wept loudly. Ram then went and clasped the feet of his father. Circumambulating the king with Sita and Lakshman, Ram bowed low before his father and mother. Then, without further delay, Ram, Sita, and Lakshman mounted the chariot and departed for the forest. Thus Lord Ramchandra left behind his kingdom, opulence, friends, well-wishers, residents, and everything else, just as a liberated soul gives up his life, and went to the forest with Sita and Lakshman. Maharaj Dasharatha kept his gaze fixed upon the dust raised by the chariots as it gradually disappeared over the horizon. Finally, after losing sight of Ram's departing chariot, the king fainted and fell to the ground. When Kaushalya and Kekeyi ran to lift him up, Dasharatha forbade the younger queen, saying, "Do not touch me. I have disowned you. I no longer want to see you." Kaushalya lifted her husband, and while bringing him back, saw that all the stores and shops were closed, and a gloom pervaded the citizens. After entering his palace, the king asked to be taken to Kaushalya's apartment. From now on, the king declared in a faltering voice, "I will stay here only." Maharaj Dasharatha passed the night with great difficulty. He felt that losing Ram was like the dissolution of the universe. Seeing the king and Kaushalya in such a miserable state, Sumitra tried to pacify him. "Please do not lament for your son, for Sita and Lakshman are with him. Ram will not experience the least difficulty. Indeed, Ram is not an ordinary human being, but the God of gods, himself the illuminator of the sun and controller of eternal time. While Ram resides in the forest, earth herself and all her natural phenomena will engage in his devotional service. Have faith that you will one day see the return of your beloved son. Your lamenting serves no purpose. Ideally, the citizens of Ayodhya have practically stopped. Already, the citizens of Ayodhya have practically stopped all activity out of grief. You must pacify the subjects and not let them fall prey to anguish. Meanwhile, some of the citizens had followed Ram's chariot to the forest, begging him to turn back. Ram told them, I cannot break my vow. I desire that you repose in Bharat the same love you have for me. As they traveled, Ram saw how some of the elderly Brahmanas were having difficulty keeping up with his chariot. Hearing their anxious pleas, Ram felt great compassion and descended from the chariot. Then, along with Sita and Lakshmana, he proceeded on foot, followed by Brahmanas, to catch up with him. Still, Rama would not turn his face backwards, for he was determined to keep his vow perfectly. Thus, as the Brahmanas constantly besieged Ram to turn back, they reached the banks of the river Tamasa. As the sun slipped over the horizon, Sumantra and Lakshmana selected a site to rest for the evening. Then, after smoothing the ground, they made a bed of leaves for Ram. When he lay down with Sita, Ram quickly fell asleep. Nearby, Lakshmana stayed awake all night, discussing the glories of his elder brother with Sumantra. Early the next morning, when Ram awoke, he saw that some citizens of Ayodhya were sleeping nearby. Just see how much the citizens love us, Lakshman, Ram said. They will not give up their determination to follow me, trying to bring me back to Ayodhya. They have completely forgotten their homes and families. They should not be burdened by Kaikeyi's curse as we are. Let us go before they awake. Devising a plan, he told Lakshman, let Sumantra drive the chariot in such a way that the citizens will become confused and unable to follow us any further. After crossing the river Tamas, Rama instructed Sumantra to drive the chariot on a clearly visible path while taking evasive measures that would mislead the citizens and then return. Sumantra then drove off, and when he returned some time later, Ram, Lakshman and Sita mounted the chariot and proceeded quickly down another path into the forest. When the citizens awoke, they looked in all directions for their beloved Lord. Searching desperately here and there, they found the tracks of the chariot wheels. But after some distance, the tracks suddenly stopped. Unable to determine which way to go, the people gazed into the distance and wept. With Ram gone, the people reproached themselves, saying, how can we return to Ayodhya without Ram? What will the women and children say when we fail to bring him back? What is the use of living here without the beautiful moon-like face of Ram? What is the use of a husband or children, or even life itself? What good are household pleasures without the daughter of King Janak and the lotus-eyed Ram? With no alternative, the citizens returned to Ayodhya, feeling extremely distressed. When the household women saw the men had returned without Ram, they reproached them with cruel, harsh words. Many simply sat down and wept. Due to shock, some of them were incapable of speaking or hearing. Everyone in Ayodhya began condemning Kaikeyi, swearing that they would never live under her rule. Thus life in Ayodhya came almost to a standstill, appearing like a great ocean whose water had dried up. The Brahmanas neglected their duties and mercantile people gave up conducting business. Householders no longer took the time to prepare meals, and the domestic animals let the grass drop out of their mouths as though stunned. The cows would not give milk to the calves, and mothers no longer felt happiness in greeting their sons. Even the stars in the sky assumed a stern aspect. Feeling tormented with grief, no one in Ayodhya could eat or engage themselves in entertainment. Indeed, everyone appeared to be almost lifeless, being absorbed in feelings of separation from Ram. As Ram proceeded through various territories, villages and forests, he heard the people condemning Dasharatha and Kaikeyi for exiling him. Finally, after crossing the Vedashruti and Gomati rivers, Ram arrived at the river Sandika, which marked the southern territory of the Koshal province. Ram stepped down from the forest and with folded hands faced Ayodhya to take leave of his birthplace. Many local inhabitants had followed Ram, and when he asked them to return home, they cried loudly, unable to depart. Thus Ram drove swiftly away, hoping to minimize their anguish. When they reached the Ganga, Ram asked Sumantra to stop the chariot under a large tree on the bank. The king of this territory was named Guha, a Nishad by birth and a close friend of Rama's. When Guha heard of Ram's arrival, he jubilantly came to meet him along with his ministers and relatives. Although born in a Nishad family and belonging to a lower caste, King Guha had all the qualities of a great devotee. He was peaceful, self-controlled, humble, tolerant, and charitable. In truth, he was superior to a Brahmana because he was a fully surrendered devotee of the Lord. It is a great mistake to think that a man's caste is determined by his birth. That is not the Vedic conclusion. Rather, caste is determined by quality. Seeing Guha approach, Ram and Lakshman came forward to greet him, and the Nishad king embraced Ram with great affection. Feeling distressed at seeing the two brothers dressed in forest clothing, Guha said, "My dear Ram, my kingdom is as much as yours as mine. Therefore, please make use of everything as if you were in Ayodhya. I am honored to have you as my guest." Guha brought sumptuous food, comfortable beds, and articles of worship to treat Ram to a royal reception. Ram was pleased to see this and embraced Guha, saying, "At heart I accept all that you have offered me. However, since I have taken a vow to wear only kusha grass, tree bark, and deer skin, and eat only fruits and roots, I cannot utilize these gifts. Therefore, please take away what you have brought, except for the food which I can use to feed my horses, for they are the favorite steeds of Maharaj Dasharatha." At that, Guha gave the sumptuous feast to the horses. Ram only took a little water, for he was fasting that day in honor of the Ganga. That night, Sita and Ram slept beneath a tree while Lakshman and Guha guarded them. Although Guha requested Lakshman also to take rest, he refused to do so while Ram and Sita were sleeping. The next morning, Ram decided to cross the Ganga. Hearing his decision, Guha ordered his men to bring forth a beautiful boat to carry them across. When the boat arrived, Ram told Sumantra, "Please return now to Ayodhya and serve Maharaj Dasharatha. Try to remain composed so that you will be in a position to pacify the others. You have been of great help to us, but from now on we shall proceed by walking." Sumantra pleaded with Ram for permission to accompany him to the forest. Ram, however, insisted, "Please go and attend to my poor father. Do not be aggrieved, for we shall certainly return in 14 years. Assure my parents of my well-being and urge the king to install Bharat without delay. Please also request Bharat on my behalf to treat all of his mothers equally." Unable to bear the thought of leaving Ram, Sumantra argued, "When I return to Ayodhya alone on this chariot, the people will become hundreds of times more unhappy. O Ram, please allow me to accompany you. If you leave me aside, my life will become unbearable. I will surely enter fire or drown myself." Ram then replied, "I am sending you back to Ayodhya so that Keke will be convinced that I have entered the forest. If you do not return with this chariot, then some fear will always remain in her mind that I might come back at any moment." Turning to Guha, Ram said, "I do not want to live in a forest surrounded by friends and servants. I shall go to an uninhabited place and live like a rishi. Therefore, please bring me the milk-like extract of a banyan tree so that I can mat my hair." When Guha brought the substance, Ram and Lakshman used it to make their hair matted, and thus they looked like forest-dwelling ascetics. Then, while bidding farewell to Guha, Sita, Ram, and Lakshman boarded the boat and departed. When the boat reached midstream, Sita offered prayers to Mother Ganga, asking for their safe return to Ayodhya. Then, after the three disembarked into the far shore, they continued their journey. Ram then instructed Lakshman to carefully protect Sita by walking in front. Thus Lakshman walked ahead, Sita stayed in the middle, and Ram followed from behind. When night fell, they took shelter of a large tree. Both Ram and Lakshman stayed awake all the night to protect Sita. That night, as they talked, Ram again urged Lakshman to return to Ayodhya to protect their mothers from Keke's persecution. Indeed, Ram became emotionally charged while thinking of his poor mother, and his face became covered with tears. While comforting him, Lakshman was able to convince him that he could not live in his absence, and at last Ram permitted him to stay. The next morning, Ram, Sita and Lakshman set out again. After walking some distance, they reached the confluence of the Ganga and Yamuna river. Desiring to meet the great Rishi Bharadwaj who lived there, Ram approached his ashram and waited outside for permission to enter. Soon a disciple of the Rishi came to greet Ram and escorted him inside. Ram saw Bharadwaj sitting in meditation, surrounded by many disciples. Ram introduced himself and then related the events surrounding his coming to the forest. Thereafter, Bharadwaj offered Ram, Sita and Lakshman a nice reception and served them many varieties of foods prepared from roots and fruits. The Rishi then offered them comfortable accommodation, saying, "O Ram, I have been expecting your arrival since hearing of your exile. I wish you could spend the 14 years here peacefully in my ashram. With my students at your disposal, you would not be inconvenienced." Smiling, Ram replied, "O best of the Rishis, your offer is very kind. However, were I to reside here, I fear many people would come to see me, since your ashram is so close to Ayodhya. Therefore, please tell me of an isolated spot where I can stay to fulfill my vow of forest life." Bharata then suggested, "You can go to the Chitrakoot mountain, some 60 miles from here. After crossing the river Yamuna, look for the giant banyan tree named Shyama. Then you will know you are proceeding in the right direction. The entire Chitrakoot area is beautifully situated with cascading waterfalls and meandering streams. The cries of peacocks and cuckoos will enchant your ears, and everywhere there is plenty of fruit and honey. Like the heavenly Gandhamadan hill, it is a most suitable place for leading a life perfectly in the mode of goodness." After spending the night at Bharadwaj's ashram, Ram, Sita and Lakshman took leave of the Rishi and departed. Later in the day, at the banks of the Yamuna, Ram and Lakshman prepared a large raft for crossing the river. Upon reaching midstream, Sita offered prayers to Kalindi. Reaching the far shore, they soon came upon the banyan tree named Shyama. Sita offered respectful obeisances to the sacred tree and prayed for the safe return to Ayodhya. Then, after waiting for some time, Ram, Sita and Lakshman passed the night on the bank of the Yamuna. The next morning, they resumed their journey while walking through the forest. Sita questioned Ram about all the varieties of plants and trees they encountered along the way. As Lakshman walked in front, bow in hand, Rama took great pleasure in describing the wonders of nature surrounding them. In this way, Ram, Sita and Lakshman finally approached the vicinity of Chitrakoot hill, where they were pleased to find an abundance of fruits, roots, sweet water and honey. When they came to the ashram of Valmiki, Ram, Sita and Lakshman were happily received by the illustrious Rishi. Being invited to reside there, Ram ordered Lakshman to bring some logs and construct a small cottage. Thus, within a short time, Lakshman had built a nice residence with walls of wooden stakes and a thatched roof. At Ram's request, Lakshman performed the customary sacrifices to the demigods for consecrating the new dwelling. When Ram entered the new cottage, he became happy, leaving aside the grief brought about by his exile. Meanwhile, after the departure of Ram, Guha had dispatched spies to observe Ram unnoticed. When they sent news that Ram had reached Chitrakoot, Sumantra mounted his chariot to begin his painful journey back to Ayodhya. After 2 days, Sumantra arrived in Ayodhya in the evening and saw that the city had become nearly desolate. Everyone was deeply grieving due to separation from Ram. Then, as the word spread of Sumantra's return, thousands of citizens came forward into the street and crowded around him. Hoping to hear some news of their beloved prince, they anxiously waited for Sumantra to speak. In reply to the anxious inquiries, Sumantra explained, "The lotus-eyed Ram has sent me back after reaching the banks of the Ganga. Not allowing me to escort him further, Ram now journeys by foot through the forest while with Sita and Lakshmana." Realizing that the Lord was not returning, some of the citizens fainted and others wept. "Because we cannot see Lord Ram, we are condemned," they said. "Alas, we have lost him. But we can never forget how he used to glance at us affectionately and speak lovingly. When will we ever see him again?" The people were grief-stricken as they recalled how Ram used to tend to their welfare, just as a father looks after his children. Sumantra then entered the royal palace to see the afflicted Dasharatha and relay the Lord's messages to him. Hearing Sumantra speak of Ram, the king immediately fainted from feelings of separation. Trying to assist the king, Kaushalya also swooned and likewise had to be helped. Before Sumantra could speak, the queen said, "Why are you now lamenting? It was you who so unkindly banished your son to the forest. You value truth more than your own son, in whom all truth resides. Arise, O king," thank you, "lest your followers begin to doubt the wisdom of your actions. If you continue to lament, your subjects will perish in the fire of separation from Lord Ram." Lashed by the sharp words of Kaushalya, the king came to his senses. King Dasharatha then said, "O Sumantra, please fully describe whatever Ram has said while departing. Where is he living? What is he eating? For all these years he has been accustomed to luxury. How has delicate Sita been able to live in the forest atmosphere? Surely her frail body cannot bear the scratch of a thorn or the scorching heat of the sun. And how is my beloved son Lakshman? What are his austerities? What is he eating? Have they sent me any message? O Sumantra, I can only survive on the strength of your reply." Sumantra knew that Maharaj Dasharatha's life could only be sustained by hearing about Ram. Thus he began to speak as follows. "At the time of our parting, Ram instructed me to return to Ayodhya to render service unto you and Bharat. Ram's only concern is for your welfare, and thus he wants to assure that your promise to Kaikeyi is fulfilled. He also requested that I inform his mother, Kaushalya, that he is faring well. In addition, O Kaushalya, your son has requested that you remain constantly devoted to righteousness and worship your husband's lotus feet as you would those of a deity. Moreover, he has asked that you shun the pride born of position and seniority and treat Queen Kaikeyi as your superior. Likewise, my king, he requests you to install Bharat as the heir apparent to the throne without delay. Even though young in years, he is still a king and deserves to be honored. Ram also asked me to relay a message to Bharat, begging that he should look upon Kaushalya and Sumatra as he does his own mother. Moreover, O Emperor, I must inform you that poor Sita just stands motionless, oblivious to everything and sighing. She has never experienced adversity before, and she did not impart any message. As I was about to leave, however, she looked at the royal chariot and suddenly burst into tears. After offering obeisances, I left, but my horses wandered, for they were also blind with tears. O Emperor, as I returned to Ayodhya, I saw that every moving and non-moving creature within the Kaushal kingdom was in a pitiable condition due to separation from Ram. Overcome by intense separation from Ram, even trees, flowers, and fruits had withered up from Giri. The rivers and lakes have dried up, the forest animals do not even move about, nor do reptiles search for food. In the ponds, the lotus flowers and the fish have perished. In the cities throughout the kingdom, the gardeners are desolate, and the birds that used to sing in them have fled. Moreover, seeing this chariot arrive without Ram, the citizens have been cast into a dazed, almost unconscious condition. The stunned condition exhibited by the citizens of Ayodhya occurs when a devotee experiences ecstatic tribulation, fear, astonishment, lamentation, or anger on behalf of the Lord. There are many instances of devotees becoming stunned when they thought they had lost the Lord's association. During Lord Krishna's pastimes, the milkmaids of Vrindavan were frequently in a stunned condition, and the cowherd boys, elders, and cows were stunned when they thought that Krishna was going to be killed by Kaliya or some other demon. Such a condition is symptomized by the inability to speak, the cessation of movement, a feeling of voidness, and an extreme awareness of separation from the Supreme Lord. Such ecstatic emotions are relished by grave devotees who have no material desires and have surrendered everything to the Lord's lotus feet. Thus, like the residents of Vrindavan, the people of Ayodhya were stunned due to transcendental love. After hearing Sumantra's words, Maharaj Dasharatha became even more overwhelmed with grief. In a fit of despair, he declared, "You must take me to where Ram is staying, or somehow bring him here, otherwise I shall die. I am merged in an ocean of grief. The two boons I granted to Kaikeyi are the shores of that ocean, and the terms of Ram's exile is its extent. My inward and outward breaths are the waves and the whirlpools. That ocean is further agitated by the inflowing river of tears shed by Kaushalya and others. The flaying of arms in agony is the leaping of the fish in that ocean. The disheveled hair is the seawood, and our loud crying is its roar. Kekai is the submarine fire that causes showers of welled-up tears, and the words of Manthara are the alligators that invest its waters. After speaking, Maharaj Dasharatha again fainted, and Kaushalya, who had become almost mad with grief, writhed on the floor. In agony, the queen wailed, "O Sumantra, if you do not take me to Ram at once, I shall surely die." Sumantra could only hope to comfort the queen by saying, "My queen, since he is in the company of Sita and Lakshmana, Ram will pass his time quite happily in spite of living in the forest." Thus, even though Kaushalya was the foremost of wives, she began to address Maharaj Dasharatha as follows. "It is your fault that my son has been exiled, allowing these miseries to befall us. How could you be so cruel to your own son and his delicate wife? How will Ram and Sita bear having to lie down upon the bare ground? How will they be able to maintain themselves eating only raw fruit and roots? How will they survive the freezing cold and winds and the torrential rains? How will they protect themselves from the ferocious animals that wander through the jungle at night in search of prey?" Even if Ram survives and returns to Ayodhya after 14 years, Bharat will never be willing to give him back the throne. Indeed, even if Bharat were to offer it, Ram would never accept something that has already been enjoyed by his younger brother. "I am so unfortunate for having a wretched husband like you. The primary support of a woman is her husband. Since you are fully under the control of Kekai, I am bereft of this shelter. The secondary support of a woman is her son, and since I am separated from him, I am doomed." Kekai's lamentations were so painful to hear that Maharaj Dasharatha lost consciousness again. Then Kaushalya realized how her husband was suffering from her words, and her heart softened. When the king regained consciousness, they reconciled, and he related the following story. One who does not consider the good or bad reaction of a particular deed is certainly a great fool. One who cuts down mango trees to grow thorn bushes will undoubtedly repent at harvest time. By banishing Ram to the forest, I have certainly followed his example. Long ago, when I was a young prince, I learned the art of piercing an invisible object with my arrow simply by hearing its sound. Once, as I was hunting at night on the banks of the river Sarayu, I heard a sound that I thought to be of an elephant drinking water. However, after shooting my arrow in that direction, I heard a loud scream, and a human voice called out, Who has so cruelly pierced me with this arrow, even though I am an innocent rishi?" As that pitiful voice cried out in pain, I ran in the direction of the crying. Thus I came upon a young ascetic boy lying upon the ground with my arrow stuck in his body. Seeing me before him, the boy said, "My old and blind mother and father are waiting for me to bring them water. You have not only killed me, but them as well. Without any care, they will be unable to continue living. Please go and confess to them that you have mortally wounded me. Before you leave, pull me out of this arrow. Please pull out this arrow, for it is giving me great pain." Maharaj Dasharatha continued, "I hesitated to pull out the arrow because I was afraid if I did so, the boy would die immediately. Seeing my reluctance, the boy assured me, saying, 'Do not fear. Thinking that you will be killing a Brahmin, I was born of a Vaishya father and a Shudra mother.' After hearing these words, I pulled out the arrow. When I did, the boy instantly gave up his life. I then filled his water pitcher and proceeded with the grief-stricken heart to the ashram of the boy's parents. There I saw the old, feeble, blind couple. Hearing me approach, they thought I was their son and began to address me with affectionate words. This caused my heart great pain, but I took courage and explained to them how I had accidentally killed their son. "I am not your son," I explained, "but a Kshatriya named Dasharatha. I mistook the sound of your son collecting water for an elephant drinking. In my ignorance, I shot an arrow and killed your son. Your Holiness, please tell me how I can atone for my sin." Because Dasharatha was a learned man, he knew that he could not escape the reaction of a sinful deed. Thus he intelligently inquired about the proper means of atonement. Scriptures advise every intelligent man to atone for his sins before death to avoid suffering in the next life. One has to make restitution according to the gravity of the offense. Even though many people today question the existence of a future life, the stringent laws of karma, action and reaction, are at work. And no one is excused, not even on the plea of ignorance. When people break the laws of God and nature, they must reap the results birth after birth, possibly descending to the lower species or to the hellish planets in order to avoid this. In order to avoid this, Dasharatha immediately tried to counteract his sin. After hearing me, the old sage replied, "Because you have voluntarily confessed your sins, I shall not curse you. If I were to do so, then you would die instantly. Since you killed my son out of ignorance, your life shall be spared. Now please take me to where my son is lying." I led the blind couple to where their son lay lifeless, and they began to caress his body and cry out pitifully. Then as soon as they offered libations of water to their son's departed soul, King Indra descended to that spot on a celestial chariot. After assuring the aged parents that they would attain the same exalted destination as their son, Indra took the boy in his celestial form to the heavenly planets. The old ascetic then cursed me. "Just as we are now experiencing great anguish upon the death of our son, you will have to feel the same grief due to the separation from yours." Then the old sage and his wife threw themselves upon their son's funeral pyre, thus giving up their lives and ascending to heaven. My dear Kaushalya, today I am reaping the fruits of my horrible crime. I am dying of a broken heart. I can feel the power of my senses ebbing away like the flame of an oilless lamp. I know that death will come to me very soon. O Queen, I have already become blind with grief. Please touch me so that I can be assured of your presence. Maharaj Dasharatha continued to lament in separation from Ram while remaining fully absorbed in his memory. When half the night had passed away, the king left his mortal body. Because he so greatly loved his son, Ram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, King Dasharatha attained the Lord's abode in the spiritual sky, where Lord Ram reigns eternally. Any devotee who always thinks of the Lord while eating, sleeping, working, or relaxing attains the Lord's transcendental abode. Thus, although King Dasharatha had to endure the reaction of his past offense, he achieved his desired goal, eternal association with Lord Ram. The next morning, when the bards came to awaken the king, his servants stood outside the door with folded hands. However, when his consorts entered his room, they found his body without any sign of life. The women cried out in horror, waking Kaushalya and Sumitra with a start. When the two queens saw that their king had passed away, they fell to the floor in agony. Hearing this uproar, Kaikeyi also came. When she understood that the king had died, she too began crying piteously. While caressing her dead husband's head, Kaushalya harshly addressed Kaikeyi, "I will mount the king's funeral pyre so that I can reside with him in the place where he has gone. Only a sinful wretch like you can bear to go on living in the absence of her husband." The ministers came and led Kaushalya away, trying their best to pacify her. Thereafter, they preserved the body of Maharaj Dasharatha in a vat of oil, since the funeral ceremonies could only be performed in the presence of a son. Being bereft of their ruler, the citizens of Ayodhya were plunged into gloom. No one was able to sleep that night. The people gathered in the streets, publicly reproaching Kaikeyi to vent their grief. The next morning, the leading Brahmanas of Ayodhya gathered at the floor, urging the king's ministers to install one of the king's sons that very day. Addressing Vashishta, Vamdeva, Markandeya, Kasyana, Gautama, and other rishis, the Brahmanas said, "A country without a king is doomed. In such a place, rogues and thieves take advantage of the situation and lawlessness prevails. In a kingdom without a ruler, ownership disappears, son disobeys fathers, charity is forgotten, and religious practice declines as the citizens exploit one another." The rishis replied, "What you say is perfectly correct. It is the king that makes the demarcation between good and evil in this world. Bereft of a good king, the subjects are just like cattlemen without a herdsman." Vashishta suggested, since Bharata has already been selected as heir apparent, he should be installed upon the throne immediately. Let swift messengers go now to the capital city of King Kaikeyi to bring back Bharat and Shatrugna to Ayodhya. Everybody agreed to the proposal, and messengers were instructed to tell Bharat only that he was urgently required at Ayodhya. After traveling for several days, the messengers arrived at Kaikeyi's capital during the night. In the meanwhile, Bharat had experienced a ghastly dream. He awoke in a most disturbed state, and seeing his despondency, Shatrughna and his other friends tried to cheer his spirits. Bharat, however, failed to find the joking words amusing. They then inquired from him seriously about his inner disturbance. Bharat explained, "Last night in my dreams, I saw my father, disheveled and dejected, fall from a mountain top into a pool of cow dung. As he floundered in the mire, the king drank oil from his cup palms and laughed hysterically like a madman. Then after the oil was spread over his body, the king began to eat rice that has been cooked in it. Suddenly the scene changed, and I saw that the ocean had become dry and the moon had fallen onto the earth. As the earth remained enveloped in the darkness, Rakshasas wandered its surface, while volcanoes erupted, spewing fire and lava. Then that scene evaporated, and I saw that the tusks of my father's elephant had been broken. Young, dark-skinned women began harassing the king, who was dressed all in black and smeared all over with red sandalwood paste, adorned with garland of red flowers, and seated upon an iron throne. Finally, I saw a chariot drawn by donkeys swiftly carrying my father towards the south. After witnessing this ghastly nightmare, I had concluded that my father, one of my brothers, or I myself will surely die. Even now, although I know not why, I feel constant fear within my heart. My voice has become hoarse and my complexion has lost its luster. My mind is reeling and I feel ashamed and hatred, all for no apparent reason. Indeed, the more I think, the more I am convinced that this nightmare forebodes great evil." While Maharaj Bharat was speaking, the messengers from Ayodhya entered the room. After offering the respects, they related their message. "O Prince, you are summoned to Ayodhya by the ministers and Vasishtha. Your presence there is urgently needed." When Bharat asked them about the welfare of his parents, they replied as instructed, telling him that all was well. Suddenly eager to depart, Bharat took leave from his maternal grandfather and uncle. Upon his leaving, Maharaj Ashwapati gave Bharat many valuable gifts. However, Bharat hardly considered them because of the urgency conveyed in Vasishtha's message and the premonition in his dream. Accompanied by Shatrughna, Bharat mounted his chariot and hurriedly departed, accompanied by a large army supplied for his protection. After passing through various territories in great haste, Bharat arrived at the outskirts of Ayodhya on the 7th day of his journey. Bharat could discern from a distance that the city did not have its usual cheerful aspect. When Bharat then entered the capital, he saw that everyone was grief-stricken. Bharat then confided to his charioteer that the signs before him indicated the demise of his father. The entire city of Ayodhya appeared neglected. Because the citizens had ceased performing their occupational duties, the entire place looked dirty and deserted. With tears in his eyes, Bharat entered his father's palace. Failing to find the king in his usual room, Bharat hurried to his mother's apartment. As soon as he entered her room, Kekai jumped up from her seat, overjoyed to see her long-absent son. After Bharat bent down to touch his mother's feet, Kekai lifted him up and lovingly placed his head on her lap. Kekai inquired about the welfare of her father and his kingdom. In reply, Bharat assured her that all was well. Then Bharat said, "I have hurried back because of Vasishtha's summons. How is my father? Why do I not find him in his room?" Kekai calmly replied, "The king, Maharaj Dasharatha, has passed away, my dear son." Hearing this, Bharat fell to the ground, grief-stricken, and began crying aloud. Kekai tried comforting him, saying, "Dear Bharat, please do not become overwhelmed by sorrow. Pious and enlightened persons remain equipoised and do not give way to such lamentations." Bharat then asked his mother how the king had died and if he had left any message for him. Then he requested, "Please send someone for Ram immediately and inform him of my arrival." As if relating good news, Kekai frankly replied, "Ram has left the Koshal kingdom, being exiled to the forest. He now wears tree bark, and Sita and Lakshmana have followed him. Your father could not bear to live in separation from Kaushalya's son, however, and thus he gave up his life while crying out, 'O Ram, O Sita, O Lakshmana.'" When Bharat asked why Ram had been exiled, thinking he may have killed a Brahmana, Kekai, determined to manipulate the events, replied, "In your absence, the king suddenly announced that he intended to install Ram as the heir apparent to the throne the very next day. To save ourselves from becoming Dominated by Kaushalya and her son, I took advantage of 2 benedictions your father had awarded me when I saved his life on the battlefield. With the first boon, I demanded that you be installed on the throne, and with the second, I banished Ram to the forest for 14 years. Ram was always Dasharatha's favorite, and without him, he died of a broken heart. Therefore, you must accept the royal throne this very day after performing the funeral ceremonies for your dear deceased father. Please take heart and give up your grief. Bharat became fiery with rage. He rebuked his mother, saying, "O wicked woman, you must be the goddess Kali herself, appearing to destroy the entire universe. You have killed my father and exiled Ram, who is dearer to me than life itself. Are you so perverse that you believe I will actually accept the throne from you, especially now? You are not my mother, you are my worst enemy. I pray that you go to hell for what you have done. Sinful woman, I will never allow you to fulfill your selfish ambition. I will leave now for the forest and bring Ram back to rule the kingdom. After Ram is installed, I will act as his eternal servant, for that is my natural position and highest aspiration." Are you so hard-hearted that you cannot understand how Kaushalya must feel in the absence of her only son? Once the celestial Kamadhenu named Surabhi happened to see 2 of her sons had fallen to the ground unconscious. The 2 bullocks had worked very hard all day for a cruel farmer plowing the field in the hot sun. When Surabhi saw them in such a pitiful condition, tears fell from her eyes upon Indra's head. When Indra looked up to see the aggrieved Surabhi, he inquired of the cause of her distress. After Surabhi explained what had happened, Indra said, "In the entire world, no one can be more dear to a mother than her son." Bharat vowed, "O wretched woman, not only will I bring Ram back to the forest, but I too will spend 14 years in exile just to keep my father's promise intact and save Ram from the sin of abandoning his woe." Saying this, Bharat fell to the floor unconscious due to the excessive grief and exhaustion. Then after a long time, he recovered and spoke to the ministers gathered there. "I have no desire to become emperor of the world, for I consider myself a servant of my elder brother Ram. Being away in a distant place, I have no idea of my mother's wicked schemes. Please believe me when I say that I had nothing to do with Ram's exile. Kaikeyi's desires are not shared by me." Kaikeyi was not prepared for Bharat's reaction to her manipulations. When she saw that her plans were destroyed, her illusion was suddenly dashed. She appeared to be awakening from a bad dream. Tears welled up in her eyes and her heart filled with anguish. Meanwhile, Kaushalya heard Bharat's voice and went to meet him. On the way, however, she fainted just at the time when Bharat and Shatrughna were coming to see her. Thus the 2 brothers saw Kaushalya lying on the floor. Picking her up, they embraced her, tears streaming from their eyes. Seeing Bharat before her, Kaushalya sarcastically remarked, "So you have now come back to enjoy the kingdom you have always coveted? You must be very happy to see that everything has worked out so well according to plan." Upon hearing these words, Bharat was greatly pained. For some time he could not even reply. Then regaining his composure, Bharat fell at Kaushalya's feet and with folded hands said, "My dear mother, I had nothing to do with Ram's exile. I had no idea what Kaikeyi was doing. Surely you know how much I love Ram. Don't you see how aggrieved I am due to Ram's exile and my father's death? To assure you of my innocence, I swear this oath. Whoever has helped in the nefarious plan to exile Ram may reap the consequences of killing a king, a cow, a woman, a child, or an old person. May he become addicted to wine, women, meat, and gambling. May godly men shun him, and may he remain childless. May he incur the sinful reaction which affects the arsonist, the treacherous friend, and the unfair arbitrator. May his be the sin of refusing water to a thirsty man, and he who shuns his wife when she approaches him when she is prepared for conception. My dear mother, Ram is my very life and existence. He is my soul, and I have no purpose separate from dedication to his service." Hearing this, Kaushalya gave up her doubts and became convinced of Bharat's innocence. After lifting him up, she placed Bharat's head on her lap, crying as she caressed him. Bharat became overwhelmed by her mother's grief, and they passed the night together in commiseration. The next morning, Vashishta told Bharat to give up his grief and cremate the body of his deceased father. Vashishta then accompanied Bharat to the cremation site. However, upon seeing the body of Maharaj Dasharatha being taken from the vat of oil and placed upon an ornamental carrier, Bharat suddenly lost all composure and began sobbing uncontrollably. Vasishtha again urged Bharat to calm himself so the funeral rites could be completed. The procession wound its way to the crematorium. As the people walked before the carrier, they scattered flowers upon the road. Then the body was placed upon the funeral pyre and the fire lit, while Brahmanas chanted hymns from the Vedas. All the king's consort had arrived, riding upon palanquins according to the rank. The sound of the wailing filled the air. Afterward, everyone went to the banks of the river Sarayu to offer water for the departed soul of Maharaj Dasharatha. A 10-day contamination period was then observed, and Bharat performed other funeral rituals for 2 days. At the end of 12 days, Bharat distributed abundant charity to the Brahmanas. At the dawn of the 13th day, Bharat and Shatrughan went to the funeral pyre to collect the remaining bones and ashes so that they could be thrown into the river Sarayu. However, arriving at the crematorium and seeing the king's remains, the brothers again became overwhelmed with grief. Weeping profusely, Bharat and Shatrughan fell to the ground and cried out, "O dear father, where have you gone, leaving us aside?" Vasishtha again comforted Bharat, saying, "My dear prince, you must control yourself so that you can execute your duties. Collect the bones and ashes of your father's cremated body. After clearing the funeral grounds, go to the river Sarayu and throw in the remains. The dualities of life and death, joy and sorrow, gain and loss are experienced by all embodied beings and are thus unavoidable. Such overindulgence in lamentation does not befit a descendant of the Ishvaku dynasty." Thereafter, the funeral rites were completed, and returning to his palace, Bharat contemplated going to the forest to bring back Ram, Sita and Lakshmana. Shatrughan then addressed Bharat, "Ram, who is the well-wisher of everyone, has been exiled to the forest on the whim of a selfish woman. My brother Lakshmana is certainly condemned. Was there nothing he could do to avert this disaster?" Just then the hunchback Manthara appeared, and although she looked no better than a monkey, her body was smeared with sandalwood paste, and she wore a royal dress with valuable ornaments. Knowing her to be the real cause of Ram's banishment, the doorman suddenly grabbed Manthara by the arm and dragged her before Bharat and Shatrughan, explaining, "Here is the wicked witch who incited Kekai to banish Ram. O prince, she fanned the flames of jealousy within the queen's heart and thus became the murderer of your father. Take her and punish her as you see fit." Swelling with a desire for revenge, Shatrughan violently seized Manthara and began to drag her around the ground. As Manthara's ornaments broke, scattering jewels here and there, her other hunchback companions fled in fear from the furious Shatrughan. Shatrughan then vowed, "I shall now unleash my long-held wrath upon both Manthara and Kekai, so that they will feel as much pain as they have caused others." As Kekai ran to the shelter of her son, Bharat restrained his younger brother by saying, "Shatrughan, women never deserve to be slain. I would have gladly killed Kekai and Manthara myself, but I know Ram would never have forgiven me. Therefore, please restrain yourself." Shatrughan relented and released Manthara, who then ran sobbing to Kekai's feet. In sparing Manthara's life, Bharat showed both compassion and commitment to religious principles. Devotees of the Lord, being filled with all good qualities, are always compassionate. Although Manthara had brought about the cruel banishment of Ram, Sita and Lakshmana, the death of Bharat and the great anguish for all the people, Bharat spared her life because of religious principles. Although she disregarded religious principles, they saved her life, just as they saved the righteous who follow them. The next morning, the bards came, eulogizing Bharat in expectation of his becoming king. However, their praises only aggravated his grief, and he ordered them to stop, saying, "I am not the ruler of Ayodhya." At that time, Vasishtha, along with his disciples, entered the royal assembly and ordered messengers to summon Bharat, the ministers, the military commanders, and other important citizens. When Bharat arrived, he was cheered with the same enthusiasm previously offered to his father. Vasishtha then addressed Bharat as follows. "O prince, because Ram and Lakshmana have been banished to the forest and your father has expired, life within the kingdom has become disrupted for want of a ruler. We know you are innocent of Kekai's intrigues and was selected by Maharaj Dasharatha as his successor. All preparations have been made and the citizens are expectant. Please give your consent so that we can install you upon the throne this very day." Bharat became pained to hear this proposal. Restraining his tears, he replied to Vashisht, O foremost of rishis, you are well aware of our family tradition that the eldest son should assume the throne. I could never think of usurping the throne for Ram, for I consider myself to be his menial servant. I want to leave for the forest as soon as possible to persuade Ram to return to Ayodhya. If I am unsuccessful, I shall remain with him like Lakshman. Therefore, make ready a formidable army and have engineers construct the necessary roads so that we may proceed without impediment. Upon hearing Bharat's impassioned plea, tears came to everyone's eyes. Everyone was pleased with his determination. Upon receiving the approval, Bharat also felt great relief and shed tears of joy. As news of Bharat's desire spread, everyone became joyful. Thereafter, the ministers summoned many engineers and laborers. Soon a huge work crew left the city to construct a broad highway into the forest. First, the workers cut down the trees and dug up the roots, leveled the ground and filled all the holes. Then they built bridges across the streams, and after paving the highway with concrete mixed with lime, they lined the road with flowering trees. Dams were then constructed to create artificial lakes. When everything was completed, the entire highway, which extended from Ayodhya to the banks of the Ganga, was sprinkled with sandalwood-scented water. Big tents were pitched at appropriate places to provide rest camps that were surrounded by fences and moats. Thus, the entire pathway, which appeared fit for use by the demigods, was completed in a very short time. After construction was thus completed, the citizens felt satisfied. The transforming effects of devotional service to the Lord are truly wonderful. Although previously the people were dejected because of separation from Ram, they immediately felt relief as soon as they began to serve him. There is no difference between serving the Lord and seeing the Lord. Indeed, serving him is the proper way to approach him. Rather than trying to see the Lord directly, one should serve him so sincerely that he will want to see us. The next morning, Bharat ordered Sumantra to bring his chariot and then departed with his huge army. The entire party led by Bharat consisted of 60,000 chariots driven by charioteers completely devoted to Ram, 100,000 cavalrymen, and 9,000 elephants decorated like lotuses. Kaushalya, Sumitra, and Kekai also came, riding in separate chariots, hoping to bring Ram back from the forest. Many other citizens also accompanied Bharat, being delighted at the prospect of seeing Ram. The citizens looked like denizens of heavenly planets. They wore their very best clothes with garlands of fragrant flowers, and their bodies were smeared with sandalwood paste. The chariots appeared like celestial airplanes, and the elephants moved inexorably forward like clouds driven by the wind on a beautiful sunny day. When the party arrived at the bank of the Ganga, they stopped to spend the night. Bharat took the opportunity to offer libations of Ganga water to his departed father. When Guha saw Bharat leading a large army into the forest, he suspected that he intended to attack Ram. Guha therefore warned his associates, "We are followers of Ram and must be prepared for danger. As a precaution, let 100 soldiers guard each of our 500 boats. Then, if necessary, we can prevent Bharat from crossing the Ganga." Taking many gifts with him, Guha went to meet Bharat, hoping to ascertain his true mentality. When Sumantra saw Guha approaching, he informed Bharat that the Nishad king was a friend of Ram. When Guha arrived, Bharat extended all hospitality and inquired of the route to Bharadwaj's ashram. Guha said, "You can rest assured I shall guide you there, so you won't experience the slightest difficulty. But please tell me frankly what your intentions are for going to see Ram. Coming with such a large family, with such a large army, it appears you have come to fight with him." Bharat replied, "My dear Guha, your accusations give me great pain. Please believe me when I say that I have come just to persuade Ram to return to Ayodhya so that he may be installed on the throne." Then, because night had already fallen, everyone prepared to take rest. Guha then approached Bharat as he lay upon his bed and told him, "When Ram came here with Sita and Lakshmana, he lay upon a bed that we made from dried leaves. As Ram and Sita slept, Lakshmana and I stayed awake all night, talking. Lakshmana could not bear to accept any comfort as long as Ram was laying on the bare ground. The next morning, Ram and Lakshmana matted their hair with sticky extract of a banyan tree and crossed the Ganga. Hearing that Ram had matted his hair, Bharat became most aggrieved. He feared that his elder brother would not be willing to return to Ayodhya. Overwhelmed with apprehension, Bharat suddenly fainted. Kaushalya, who sat nearby, came to his aid. It was only after 1 hour that Bharat regained consciousness. When he saw his anxious stepmother, he assured her that his fainting was not caused by hearing anything untoward about Ram. At Bharat's urging, Guha continued to describe everything Ram had done on his way to the forest. Guha then led Bharat, Shatrughna, and their mothers to where Ram and Sita had slept. He showed them the kusha grass that remained crushed by the weight of their bodies. Everyone was very sorry to see this, for they remembered how Ram used to sleep comfortably, surrounded by royal opulence. Bharat was specially pained, for he considered himself to be the cause of Sita, Ram, and Lakshmana's suffering. Bharat condemned himself and decided to immediately make his hair matted and lie down upon the ground, thus taking Ram's place in exile. The next morning, adorned with matted hair and tree bark dress, Bharat requested Guha to assist him in crossing the Ganga. Thereafter, the entire army of men and horses was taken across on the boats while the elephants swam the river. After safely reaching the other side, Bharat disembarked and with Guha's guidance proceeded for the ashram of Bharadwaj. When Bharat drew near the great Rishi's hermitage, he left his army waiting at a distance of 2 miles and proceeded on foot with Vashisht and Shatrughna. When Bharadwaj saw Vashisht enter his ashram, he quickly rose up to greet him. He proceeded to ask of the welfare of Ayodhya, wanting to know Bharat's true intentions. The Rishi said, "O Prince, please tell me what brings you to the forest. I pray you have not come with any intention of harming Ram." Bharat was extremely hurt by the Rishi's words. With tears in his eyes, he replied, "It is painful to see how people doubt my intentions. Please know that I have come to the forest only to try to convince Ram to return to Ayodhya so that he can rule the kingdom. O foremost of sages, please be gracious to me and show me where Ram is staying." Bharadwaj then replied, "O Prince, I already knew your true mentality by dint of yogic power. I only tested you as a formality. Your elder brother Ram is residing at the Chitrakoot mountain. Now please stay here for the night. You can resume your journey tomorrow." So that brings me to the end of the section that I was going to read. And is Vijay Damodar Prabhu here? Leela Nandini Mataji? Is Damodar Prabhu here? Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna.